Listen to me closely. If you've ever been pushed to the absolute edge by someone you trusted, if you've ever been made to feel completely worthless, I want you to pay attention to every single word I am about to say. My toxic stepbrother sold my only vehicle to pay for a lavish catering bill. He threw me out of my own home like I was garbage. But exactly 7 days later, I legally acquired his hidden $20 million empire, and he literally handed me the paperwork with a smirk on his face. This isn't just a story about getting even. This is a story about how your greatest pain can become the exact fuel you need to build your own kingdom. My name is Amy Plaisance. I am 29 years old, and for my entire adult life, I was the silent, invisible backbone of a family business that my stepbrother, Vance, took all the credit for. When our parents passed away unexpectedly, Vance immediately appointed himself as the visionary, the CEO of our family legacy. He told everyone I was too young, too emotional, and too fragile to handle the estate, so he put all the main accounts in his name, leaving me as a glorified employee with zero authority. Vance lived a life of absolute luxury, designer suits, penthouse parties, private flights to Aspen. Meanwhile, he kept my salary just low enough that I could never build my own credit or move out. He engineered my desperation so I would stay dependent on him. The breaking point happened during a massive heat wave in Los Angeles. I had a customized Jeep, the only thing I actually owned, the only thing that brought me joy. One afternoon, I walked into the penthouse to find Vance lounging on the sofa with his new wife, Chloe. He casually tossed a crumpled receipt at my chest. He had legally liquidated my Jeep because he claimed the company was going through a cash flow issue, and he needed to pay for a luxury event he was hosting that night. When I demanded to know how I was supposed to get to my job, he just laughed, a short, cruel sound. He threw a black garbage bag filled with my clothes onto the floor. "Go live in the old textile factory," he sneered. "It's empty, it's out of sight, and frankly, Amy, your aesthetic is ruining our brand." He walked away to pop a bottle of champagne. A younger, weaker version of me would have cried. I would have begged him to be reasonable. But in that exact moment, something inside my brain simply clicked off. I stopped thinking like a victim, and I shifted gears into the only mode that has ever kept me safe: pure, calculated logistics. In the business world, when a partner breaches your trust this severely, you don't cry to customer service. You secure your remaining assets, cut your losses, and prepare for a hostile takeover. I took a 3-mile night bus out to the industrial district. The old family textile factory wasn't a building, it was a rotting brick tomb surrounded by cracked pavement and chain-link fences. Vance hadn't stepped foot in this place for nearly 7 years. He was terrified of dirt, allergic to manual labor, and treated this property like a radioactive wasteland. He considered it a massive burden dragging down his real estate portfolio. Inside, the heat was suffocating. The air tasted like rust and neglect. I cleared a spot on the concrete floor, using my garbage bag of clothes as a pillow. For a week, I lived in that oven, charging my phone with a solar bank, quietly plotting my next move. Then, Vance showed up. He barged in wearing a pristine linen suit, holding a red envelope. He threw it at my feet. It was a final disconnection notice from the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power. The amount due was staggering, $6,500. "You've been squatting here for a week," he snapped, wiping his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "I'm not paying to keep the lights on in a dump. Transfer the utilities to your name today, or I'm having the city rip the meter out of the wall." He spun around and marched back to his air-conditioned sports car. I stood there alone, holding the bill. I looked at the usage graph printed on the back. My job as a data analyst isn't just crunching numbers, it's looking for anomalies. I look for leaks. In a normal empty building, power consumption fluctuates, but the graph on this bill was a flat, straight horizontal line across the entire month. High consumption, constant draw, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That wasn't a forgotten light bulb. That wasn't an old refrigerator. That was life support. I looked around the cavernous, dead factory. There were no machines running, complete silence. But the meter doesn't lie. Something in this building was eating electricity like a starving animal. I grabbed my phone flashlight and walked to the main breaker box on the far wall. It was covered in decades of grime. Inside, most switches were taped off, but one breaker, labeled Zone B, was hot to the touch. I followed the thick industrial conduit. It ran up the brick wall, across the steel ceiling trusses, and completely disappeared behind a massive stack of rotting plywood sheets in the darkest corner of the warehouse. I grabbed a crowbar and jammed it behind the plywood and pulled. The wood crashed to the floor, kicking up a massive cloud of dust. But behind the wood, there wasn't a brick wall. It was drywall, newer drywall. Someone had built a false partition to shorten the room. I swung the crowbar. The drywall shattered. Instantly, a blast of freezing cold air hit my face, sterile, climate-conditioned air. And with it came a sound, a low, steady hum that had been perfectly muffled by thick insulation. I smashed a hole big enough to step through. I wasn't stepping into a storage closet. I was stepping into a massive, climate-controlled bank vault. The space was pitch black, illuminated only by the blinking green LED lights of massive industrial dehumidifiers lining the walls. They were the source of the hum. They were the reason for the $6,500 power bill. I raised my flashlight, and the beam cut through the darkness, hitting something that looked like a giant clear plastic blister. It was a car capsule, an inflatable storage bubble used exclusively to preserve multi-million-dollar high-end vehicles in a perfect vacuum. And there wasn't just one, there were 12. 12 shimmering bubbles lined up with military precision. My heart started hammering against my ribs. I walked up to the first one. The flashlight beam danced over the curve of a fender. Highland green paint, fastback roofline. I saw the dent in the rear bumper, the specific, unrepaired damage from one of the most famous Hollywood chase scenes in history. It was an original 1968 Ford Mustang GT, the Bullet Mustang. I moved to the next bubble, a bright red 1961 Ferrari 250 GT California Spider, the exact model used in famous classic movies. They said the original was crushed years ago. It wasn't crushed, it was sitting right in front of me. I stumbled back, my mind racing. Our late father had been an obsessive, secretive collector. He must have built this vault right before he passed away. And Vance called this place a burden. He threw a disconnection notice at me because he was too cheap to pay the bill. He had never checked the meter. He was so blinded by his own arrogance and his hatred for manual labor that he had been sitting on top of the holy grail of automotive history, treating it like a landfill. I wasn't standing in an old factory anymore. I was standing in a gold mine, and I was the only person alive who knew it existed. I didn't call Vance. I didn't call the power company. I called a high-end freight and logistics specialist I knew from my industry. I asked him to come down immediately. When he arrived, he looked at the rotting building with extreme skepticism. "You said you had a cargo issue, Amy. This is a demolition site." "It's not about the building," I said. "It's about the inventory." I led him through the broken drywall. When his flashlight hit the cars, he actually stopped breathing. He spent 30 minutes checking VIN plates through the plastic bubbles. His hands were physically shaking. "Amy," he whispered, taking off his glasses, "do you have any idea what you are standing on?" "I have a guess," I replied, keeping my voice dead calm. "Give me a conservative number. If we liquidated quietly to private buyers overseas, $18 to $20 million. Easily. $20 million. Vance was currently trying to sell the entire factory land to a commercial developer for a mere $600,000 just to clear some of his personal debts. He was throwing away $20 million because he was too lazy to look behind a wall. That was his mistake, and I was about to capitalize on it. I played my part perfectly. I called Vance the next morning, sounding defeated. I told him I found a junk removal company willing to clear out the entire warehouse so he could finalize his real estate deal without paying the city's $50,000 hazardous waste penalty. But, I added, I'm not putting my name on the line unless you sign a full liability release. You need to legally transfer ownership of all interior contents, abandoned property, and debris to me. Once you sign it, I take the trash and you get your empty building. Vance laughed. He thought he was pulling the ultimate scam on his naive little sister. He didn't even read the contract my lawyer drafted. He signed it digitally within 3 minutes, legally defining a $20 million vintage car collection as abandoned waste and transferring 100% of the ownership rights directly to Amy Plaisance. By midnight, a fleet of unmarked, climate-controlled transport trucks arrived at the loading dock. By sunrise, the vault was empty. 2 weeks later, the real estate deal closed. Vance sold the property for pennies. He actually called me to gloat, mocking me for spending my time hauling away garbage. I didn't argue. I simply forwarded him an email from a prestigious international auction house confirming the $18.5 million insurance valuation of the 12 vehicles he had just legally gifted me. The silence on the phone was the most beautiful sound I have ever heard in my 29 years of existence. His lawyers tried to sue, of course, but the contract was airtight. Vance had legally abandoned the assets. Within 6 months, Vance's lavish lifestyle caught up to him. His wife left him, his creditors seized the penthouse, and his reputation in the business world evaporated. He lost absolutely everything. I didn't destroy him. His own arrogance did. Today, I own one of the most successful data logistics firms on the West Coast. I bought back our parents' original estate, and I keep the 1968 Mustang parked in the front lobby of my corporate headquarters as a daily reminder. Listen to me. True revenge is not about screaming or fighting or trying to ruin someone's life. True revenge is taking the stones they threw at you and quietly using them to build your own castle. Stay silent, stay observant. Let their arrogance be their downfall. Outsmart them, outgrow them, and never, ever let them see you coming.